Welcome everyone to our final session on Smarter Health, AI's role in the next decade. My name is Amanda DiBattista, and I'm a program director at the National Institute on Aging, and I'll be your moderator for this last 45-minute session. We're really bringing together leaders across clinical care, federal policy, consumer technology, and regulation to explore how AI will shape health and aging in the years ahead. We're really delighted to have assembled an outstanding panel, and I'd like to invite them to the stage now for me to introduce them. The first is Sudeshna. She's an associate professor of neurology at Harvard Medical School, director of the Mass General Hospital Bioinformatics Core, and co-PI on the Mass AITC and co-lead of its AD-ADRD pilot core. Next, we have Shari Ling, Deputy Chief Medical Officer at CMS. And we also have Hon Pak, Senior Vice President and Head of the Digital Health Team at Samsung Electronics, and A2 Collective External Advisory Panel member. And finally, we have Saha, Associate Director for Strategic Initiatives at the Digital Health Center of Excellence at the Center for Devices and Radiological Health at FDA, and Acting Associate Director for Data Science and AI Policy at the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research at FDA. And so what we'd like to do is allow each of our panelists to provide a few opening remarks. And they're going to talk about where AI is already transforming care delivery, coverage, connected health, and regulatory science. And we really want to get into how it can evolve in the next decade to most impactfully and responsibly support older adults and their caregivers. So I'd like to turn it over to the panel now. Sudeshna, why don't you start?
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation to this really important and strategic discussion of smarter health and what AI can do today and what we can expect it to do over the next 10 years. So if you think about the biggest problem with smarter health, it's not the lack of AI or technology per se, but rather, I think the real problem is that the care delivery and the care systems that are there for older adults, especially the ones that are living with dementia, is that that care tends to be reactive and it's fragmented. So it's a known fact that 50% of the people living with dementia are actually undiagnosed, and even when they're diagnosed, it's often very late. It's too late to turn back that neurodegeneration trajectory and take care of interventions that can help the patient and their families. The other is care is fragmented. It's some of it happens at the clinic or like a specialty academic hospital where I'm from, and or some of it at home, and there's not integrated ecosystem that happens, and that also often leaves the caregiver out of the providing the care, and that's actually it's an important problem to think about because caregiver stress and burden is a very real thing. So what AI and smarter health can go from this reactive, fragmented system to more of a proactive, continuous, connected care that's personalized to the individual and their families and their whole ecosystem. So AI has been making big strides towards and progress towards this goal. And the first one is in terms of faster and earlier detection of disease. And many of the pilots today we have heard about different technologies, and my lab's also involved in one of them is to take something that is already readily available, such as electronic health records, and use all of the rich data there, both the unstructured clinical notes as well as their medications, their labs, and their interactions with the hospital system, put it together to be able to diagnose those individuals that have a cognitive impairment or concerns, but don't have a structured, coded diagnosis that can help them get the care and the resources that are necessary for someone who is living with dementia. So the second place where AI has been really helping is moving the care from the clinic into the homes, and there's like continuous home-based monitorings, and there's a whole ecosystem of like wearables and home-based devices that take like data, like for example from my Apple Watches, and can get like continuous streams, and so you can monitor and be able to look at the patient, in their naturalistic settings rather than in the clinic infrequently. And then the third way this is happening is like personalized interventions. So there are many ways where it's going from epidemiologic studies of like population-based devices to like the individual, and then suggesting interventions and predictions for the individual. So that's where we are today, but as we think about the next decade, where do we want to go? So one of them is, AI is great at making predictions. We care a lot about our AUCs and accuracies and stuff like that, but going from predictions to actually interventions that can make a difference in the lives of the older adults, patients, and everybody living with them. The second way is being able to like integrate biology into the model, and just taking wearables and sensors that can have some amount of health benefits. But one of the, I think, the most advancement that we've seen, like from like Dr. Iyer's talk today, is in the field of like diabetes management, right? We actually have like continuous glucose monitors that are monitoring the biology, and then we are able to take that and every other signal around it and the other dimensions and be able to make those interventions. And third is like, when these product designs happen, they need to be also very human-centered, to taking into account the design where the older adults are involved, their caregivers are involved, the clinicians, and everybody involved in making those systems so that it's not burdensome, it's easy to use, and it's the hardest one is like be able to get like trust, build trust on that device. Like AI, everybody in this room is very excited about, but if you talk about AI to like my mom, for example, there's suspicion, and it's like, AI is a technology where you can like clone voice and be like scammed, right? That's or like there are those or like there's misinformation. So building that trust and that this is a device that is safe and can make your lives better is probably the biggest hurdle that needs to be crossed over the next decade. So I'm going to end with that, we have AI, and we need to move from more accurate and better algorithms to one where like it's making a difference in the home setting, allowing older adults to live independently, safely, with their caregivers, and improve quality of life.
All righty. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Shari Ling. I am a gerontologist and a geriatrician. I still practice in the context of volunteering my time at the Baltimore VA in a dementia care clinic. The remarks I'm actually going to make really are that of representing my agency. So as mentioned, I represent the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and writ large, CMS remains the largest payer for healthcare services and care delivery globally. The challenges that we've had are that CMS, the population that is served by CMS, which is about 1 in 3 Americans, is very, very heterogeneous across the programs. So we have Medicare that is defined by age and also end-stage renal disease, disability, and also a few genetic approved states where that all determines who is eligible for the benefit. In addition, CMS also runs the Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program. So that too is very heterogeneous because it is a federal program of oversight that is state administered. And we have 50 states plus territories that really provides payment for care and services for those in the geographic region. And between adults who actually, and children, and the other payment mechanism that Medicaid is very significant for are those who are residing in long-term care facilities. So you can see what the tremendous challenge is in meeting the needs of the beneficiaries that CMS serves. I believe, so where does AI fit into all of this? So couple of fold. So CMS has specific authorities vested in CMS. So in Medicare, there's the coverage authority. That is, in order for any care or service to be paid for by Medicare, you have to have coverage coding as well as payment. So coverage relies on the evidence, and it is the preponderance of evidence for which it has to meet, it has to address populations, the science has to address populations of people who look like Medicare beneficiaries. So by age, by criteria, by conditions, and often that is missing from many of the technologic and newer innovative therapeutic options. So that's one. In addition, though, CMS also sets the minimum health and safety standards that all Medicare participating facilities have to be able to meet. Those are minimum health and safety standards, and those criteria, there's some uniformity across the care settings, but you can imagine it might be a little different for nursing homes as opposed to acute care hospitals. So in addition, though, CMS has authority to provide technical assistance in quality improvement and quality measurement, right? These are very distinct authorities, very different lines of business that all synergize to meet the needs of the population of people that we serve. So where does AI fit into all of this? So there is the reliance upon the evidence. So the evidence is the evidence. Whether or not we would even know that AI has helped to generate some of that evidence, that's a challenge, right? Because can you really just create evidence that's missing, fill in the missingness? Maybe not. And keep in mind that the authority is based on the need to serve the beneficiary. So I think that's a caveat. The other way that AI can actually help us, though, is in our work, right? So can we be more efficient in our review of the literature? Can we be more efficient in identifying what the gaps are? Can we be more efficient learning from the development and implementation of policy and the effectiveness of that policy in improving health outcomes meaningfully for the people that we serve? I will also say, in the spirit of identifying the missingness, though, often the outcomes being that the agency is driving towards outcome-based payments, value-based payments that are really designed to focus on outcomes rather than just care delivery of processes. The outcomes actually often are life or death, as opposed to what might be really meaningful for the people who we serve. Another area of missingness and therefore opportunity is what is meaningful across all of the different care conditions or the conditions that people are living with who are Medicare beneficiaries, Medicaid beneficiaries, and often both. Mobility, self-care, cognition. These often are missing elements even in the EHRs. So I think that is a caveat, but we look to a day where we can utilize tools such as AI for us to be able to do our jobs in implementing the authorized programs and policies and refining those policies so that they can better serve and fulfill the intent of each and every policy. So that is CMS, that is some of the opportunities and how we're working, but also what we're working on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the CMS perspective. That's really helpful in the context of this group. Moving on to the industry perspective, tell us your opening thoughts, Hon.
Sure. Great to be here. It's my, I think, fourth year. I think third or fourth year, right, Rose? She'll stop inviting me sooner or later, I figured. But I feel very comfortable right now because I have 3 girls at home, and so I'm usually surrounded by women. And so I need to keep my comments brief is what I've learned at home, so I'll try to do that. I would say that, Samsung Electronics as a consumer electronics company, we've been using AI for a long time. We've been using it for algorithm development, whether it's using PPG signals and turning that into, heart rate signals to other detections like atrial fibrillation or other ectopic beats, or to develop sleep apnea screening. So we've been doing this, and other technologies have been doing this, and everyone knows that. I think what's changed recently, if you seen the news, Anthropic or Gemini or you name it, OpenAI, they all are getting into medical records and AI so that they can begin to personalize and become a health assistant. And you see a lot of other companies entering into the health assistant space to try to help people understand and have a conversation around their needs. Mental health is a very interesting space in that not us, but people using mental health AIs are sharing things more so than they would with a normal provider, and so there are a lot of interesting things going on in that space. So, right now we obviously are, and we're going to launch a beta health assistant that is specifically to the individual's longitudinal data, including the PHR, over the next 6 months. So you'll see more of that coming out. I think what's exciting and what's more relevant to this discussion is how I feel very upbeat, because one of the things that I've always struggled with as a caregiver is that this caregiver need, just right now the solutions we have does not scale. It just, we know what things we need to do, but yet we just don't have an answer to that. And so AI is the one solution that, if done correctly, could scale the issue, the challenges of the workforce of the caregivers. Now, how we do that and execution, all of that, but the opportunity and some of the assistance that I've seen can clearly help us in that direction. It will never replace the human touch, in my opinion, but perhaps with robots and other things and AI, the world is changing, and I see that coming quite a bit. And so I'm excited about that. And then the other thing that I've been worried about is, as seniors and their interface with the human-computer interface has been challenging even for regular people, never mind for the seniors. But the AI also now in the future, I think, is going to be different in that I think it's going to be adaptive. UX is not going to be the navigation in the way we think about. I think technology is going to, for the first time, go in the passive background and begin to interact with people in the way that the user can understand and personalize that to that person. So if you're having a conversation about making an appointment with a doctor, your calendar could pop up, or interesting things could happen to create the right set of interactions and data input. So, to me, the AI with robotics is a very interesting thing that I think will help address the caregiving needs in ways that I don't think we've necessarily always thought about. And then you'll see the wearables as now that has increased in adoption and it's growing year over year. Think about that. That data is now being combined with PHR, and you collect that over 5, 10 years, and you can now begin to understand how to alert, how to predict diseases that we didn't even know about. We're leaving signals at home as we're moving around. It's just like DNA. Like when you touch things, we're leaving our fingerprint all over the place. We just haven't had the capacity because we couldn't tie these wearable and other data along with the clinical outcomes data. And I think that's what's exciting, because in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be now able to longitudinally match the wearable data that is only getting better and better with clinical data and the outcomes. And all of a sudden, we're going to be able to do things in ways that we haven't thought about. Thank you.
Thanks. Really helpful to hear from the industry perspective. And I've been interested so far to hear the differences between the opening remarks from the different sectors that we're representing here. So finally, we'll go on to the regulatory perspective. Annie?
Well, maybe I'll start with, first of all, we've been open for business in the digital health space for a very long time. On the device side, the list of AI-enabled medical devices goes back to 1995. We have now authorized over 1,400 devices that have AI enablement in some way. We've had almost 200 sensor-based digital health technologies, and I think one thing we're also, kind of to the points you've heard from the other audience members, or panelists, sorry, is that there's also sort of a de-siloing of, I think before people would think about wearables, DHTs in this box here, AI in this box here, but you really need to bring it all together so that we can get those better measures of health. And so first, just want to say, we are open for business across the way in terms of the use of AI. On the drug side, I think we're at over 800 submissions that have used AI in some way, and a big area is in clinical trial, improving efficiencies, trial recruitment, model, try to basically reduce the time and cost of drug development, as well as those novel endpoints. And so leveraging these digitally derived endpoints and novel metrics that we can now collect, and that we really need to bring sort of a multidisciplinary expertise together. And we talk about that in some of our guiding principles that we've done internationally on both AI, good machine learning practices for devices, as well as good AI practices for drug development. You really need to think about how do we break down some of these silos between, the measurement science people, the EHR data science, the AI scientists, the software engineers, the wearable technologists, and how do you bring all those people, and of course, is it meaningful? Is it clinically meaningful? Is it meaningful to patients? Are we capturing information that actually is going to help people live healthier lives? And then some of our aspects in terms of specifically related to sort of the aging population, we, from the CDRH side, have launched the Home as a Healthcare Hub initiative. And so the idea of thinking about technologies and bringing technologies to people where they are. And so that could really be helpful in the context of different aging populations, different disease states, both for patients and caregivers, and what does that look like? And so one of the first products of that was, it's called LilyPad. It's sort of VR system of looking at different home environments and seeing how could you design for that, so that you can think about how to design for the actual users versus just a technologist thinking hey, this sounds cool, I'm gonna build this widget. But really thinking about what does it actually look like in different environments and different, types, like a smaller apartment versus big house, in a dwelling unit and thinking through and helping people try to think through some of those design concepts. We also recognize, I mean, FDA is not going to solve all of this on our own. So we are members of different partnerships and collaboratives. We are part of standards activities to try to create, what does appropriate verification validation look like for technologies. We're a member of different collaborative communities, including DIME's Connected Health Collaborative Community that has just kicked off an Aging in Place of Choice project. And so, we're trying to also keep an eye out on what's happening in the ecosystem so that we can do what we can, how we can support from an FDA perspective. And that includes obviously also, I realized I didn't really have to talk about CDS and general wellness because that got covered pretty well by Dr. Iyer earlier. But that's a continued effort on our side is how do we continue to provide clarity to developers of where is sort of the line in terms of FDA's regulation of whether it's AI's enabled medical devices or also trying to provide clarity of like if you're using AI models in the drug development process that things like operational efficiencies or generally drug discovery are outside the scope. And, basically if it's something that you're using AI for that the agency never reviewed before, we're still not going to review it just because you used AI. So that's sort of the nice way we like to sort of think about it. And we are really trying to think about how to focus on what are those higher risk applications and sort of scoping some of those more low risk. And I think some of the updates that you, for the general wellness guidance and the CDS guidance get to that. So that way, technologies can get to people who need them faster. And that's the commitment we sort of have across the board. And then, we're also collaborating across our federal agencies. And so one of the programs we're really excited about is the Tempo pilot, which is basically the idea is we're giving enforcement discretion to digital health companies who have low risk devices while they collect the evidence through the CMI access model. And then they can collect the evidence and, they have to collect the evidence on the access model side. And then we can leverage that evidence to then make, for a company to then come in for their ultimate marketing submission. And that's focused in multiple different areas that certainly impact the elderly from cardiovascular, mental health, musculoskeletal, and I know there's one more and I'm completely blanking on it. It's Friday afternoon. I'm going to use that as my excuse. So that's a really exciting program, and we're trying to think of how can we work collaboratively on that evidence generation, because I think that's one thing you've heard as a theme across all of us is how do we collect the data and then also understand that longitudinally so that you can either develop better models for future prediction, but then also currently help people in terms of where they are right now.
Thanks so much for giving us the regulatory perspective, Annie. That was great. I want to turn now to a couple of questions for the panel, and then I'm hoping to have time at the end to open it up to audience questions, so please be thinking of those as we discuss. Over the course of today and yesterday as well, we've talked a lot about opportunities and challenges. And so particularly for this session, I'd be interested to know your take on what it would take to overcome the current challenges to the field to really accelerate responsible AI innovation in aging. And how can NIA, NIH, HHS help with this? Or are there other entities that should be coming into play as well for us to consider as we think about the future?
So I can start this conversation. I think, one of the impediments I think has been, and you referenced this, the siloed nature of the work that we do. I mean, you're industry, we're federal, you're FDA, we're CMS. And in the meantime, the people that we're serving, they have a variety of health conditions, right? And even with the NIH, 26 institutes, how many institutes? Right. So, and when we think about, or even ask the question, what are the outcomes that matter? And there will be disease-specific outcomes, which are completely legitimate and important, for FDA approval purposes. When it comes to CMS purposes, the outcomes have to be meaningful and the evidence goes beyond FDA safe and effective to is it reasonable and necessary? Does it improve those outcomes? And is the technology, is the treatment useful? So I think one of the opportunities we have is to cross the divide, not only across agencies, across public and private, across individual disease states, but to try to figure out for the people who are living with health conditions. I mean, we kind of all want something similar. We want to be able to engage in our lives. We want to be able to be mobile, independent to the extent possible, be able to think, appreciate that engagement, take care of ourselves and our families, be able, and the appreciation part is to be able to think, right? And so I think a true opportunity would be to align across a few core outcomes that would be relevant to all across individual conditions, across different purposes, whether it's care delivery or policy or research. So I think that represents a really important opportunity, because the outcomes can then be your standards according to which you ask your questions for research purposes, for improvement purposes, for technologic development purposes. So that's one thought.
Yeah, I'll pick it up from there. And so, outcomes is like really like to think about, what are the outcomes? Is it like living longer independently at home, right? Or is it having some other quality of life improvement, or like, and so on. And I think one of the ways that has worked, but we could have a little bit more, is like for those technologies to have a way to do like a pragmatic trial, and where you're looking at endpoints that are meaningful, not only like in a health ways, but also like just like as a quality of life, right? So you can have these endpoints that are more that are reimbursable, that you can actually have, of course, pass your regulatory approval as well as like get that thing. So if we had like a more of like, I think impact collaboratory comes to mind, but that kind of a setting where these digital health technologies that are out there, we just need more and more like trials to be able to understand their effectiveness.
I think maybe to build on that too is thinking about some of these from a more pre-competitive perspective. We don't want each company to be spending time and like if you're in a certain disease area, like we don't need each company to do their own development of their own digitally derived endpoint. Like let's try to, and that is happening, but how to better do that. And then, just more broadly, having access to high quality data sets to then be able to ensure that, the models that are being tested and trained on are going to be reflective of, whatever the target population is of, the device or the therapeutic.
All right, I have one more question for the panel, and then I'm going to open it up to audience questions. So please feel free to make your way to the microphones if you have anything that you'd like to ask our panel. So again, looking forward, over the next decade, what will distinguish AI tools that really meaningfully advance the science versus those that are simply adding technological complexity?
I mean, I think that's just a broader like market. The market will kind of, I think, help with that, because people aren't going to adopt technologies that they're not going to use, or it's not going to be beneficial to them, or it's complicated. And I think that's another thing too in terms of the development side, is we see a lot of people building tech for tech's sake rather than thinking about like what is the clinical problem or the patient problem that you're actually trying to solve.
That's an excellent point.
So I think, as a tech company who hopefully is not building tech for tech's sake, I think that as a physician, I've been in the healthcare space for almost 30 years now, and I would love to tell my patients that I've simplified healthcare for them, and that is not true. We've over time complicated, and adding technology has only largely complicated from a patient perspective. And we haven't really achieved some of the efficiencies like airline and retails and the benefits of the technology. I think we've been lagging in that regard. And so what I see in the 10, 20 years as agent to agent interactions occur, you can imagine the knowledge. For example, today I learned about the marketplace that one of the pitches I've learned about the marketplace for senior caregivers and how do you bring all that together and personalize it, localize it. But imagine those types of agents that know all of that, knows your digital twin, and starts interacting, not with a complicated set of technologies or UX, but just knows you, and then begins to guide you and help you. That's what I see. And I think to do that, and then the second thing I would add is behavior change, because I think one of the things that I struggle with as a physician is that I can know what the patient needs to do. Patient sometimes knows, or a lot of times they know what to do. They just can't do it. They're too busy, or there are socioeconomic issues, or there are motivation and other issues. And so part of what I see in the 10, 20 years is if the agent can do that last mile in ways that have not been done before, which is take what we already know, create bite size into the routines, know the context of my behavior and my willingness to change, and begin to nudge and get me to do the right things. Because the problem is the donut is so close. For me to skip that is the problem, right? Again, maybe the robot needs to move that donut further away. Who knows? But anyway.
I'm actually very hopeful about the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in the future. I think there's tremendous opportunity to have the technology, AI, develop in such a way that it becomes a useful tool. I think we have to remember these are going to be tools, and also remember that we have different customers for those tools. So, in my clinic, the customer is, the EHR is, and I work in an integrated health system where it is still a long journey to have discrete pieces of information that can be easily swept up to be able to know what the outcomes are. The records still are very messy, and part of the reason it's remains messy is and overly burdensome is the documentation and the construct of the management tool, we'll call them EHRs, is for billing purposes. It's not necessarily for the purpose of conveying information that matters to the care and keeping of the person, right? So, that's an example of technology. If we actually think about the use case for the technology, I think that's an important part of what we have learned from our challenges that we continue to face. The other part of it, though, is that, healthcare really needs to be a partnership between the clinicians who provide the service and the people who are receiving the service so that they can be on the same page and engage in key conversations that can chart their course of care over time. I think it's a separate an important audience, right? Patients as opposed to clinicians. And then keep in mind, there's the health ecosystem that's a different level of customer, but still to be able to walk in those shoes and how to use the tools, which have different purposes, I think is going to be an important discipline or process for us to keep in mind.
Yeah, to me, I think the one that the technology that's going to be most successful is the one that has an impact and it's intervention based, and it actually has impact on things like fewer hospitalizations or fewer ED visits and emergency visits and better life at home, and it's all got to be done in a way that is like seamless and it's happening, and you're actually using it, and you don't know that you're using it, and then so it's like very easy to use, and it's a technology that just happens. I mean, one of the examples is, again, dating myself, like, when we had like a flight to come here, it was, I had to get it from my Palm Pilot and then your diary and put it on my calendar, right? But now, like, when it's there in your mail, it automatically shows up on your calendar. I can't tell, like, how many flights I've actually gotten on time because, those kind of, like, very simple things, it just happens in an automated way that you don't have to think about. So those are the technologies that are like, okay, we're just using it because that's what we do. There's our glasses or like wearables or things that are in the home that are collecting the data and are just like seamlessly doing their work without providing additional burden.
Thanks. And I have to note that the time is flashing at me, so okay, it's starting over. Perfect. Making sure that I'm not dropping the ball on my moderator job. I would love to invite the audience to ask questions at this time if you have them. So we'll start up here.
There was a recent ethnographic study of the attempts to develop caregiving robots in Japan called Robots Will Not Save Japan. We have a project here with a caregiver robot, and there's at least one other I saw at the poster session. And of course, Samsung may do a better job than Sony. Korea may lead the way. What do you have in terms of comments about the future of robotic caregiving? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in robotics, so I want to caveat that. But as a physician and as a technologist that's been surveying Japan, it's a very interesting country because of the elderly population and also their social construct. And so there seems to be, we have problems with social isolation, with aging, but Japan has it twice, 3 times as worse, is what I understand. So I think that's why a lot of innovation is actually happening in Japan. For me, I think it's almost when I saw, let me pause, because I think there was a commercial. I don't know if it was AI-generated commercial or not, but there was this dog, I swear, looked like a dog and acted like a dog. And it didn't do anything other than bark and whatever, and so what I learned from that, whether that's a real commercial or not, is that we want empathy, right? First and foremost, we want to be able to be cared for and to care for others first and foremost, no matter how intelligent. And so I assume that the articulation and all the technologies of robots is going to be there. I think it's going to be there. I think the intelligence is going to be there. I think it's just a matter of time. I think it's going to accelerate, especially with AI. Now the question is, who builds trust and empathy and personalize that for that person? Because I think one of the things we struggle with is not knowing the intent and the needs of that individual at the moment of time and how you deliver that with empathy. And so whoever can figure out the intersection of empathy and the intelligence in the home and knows that person, I think is going to win. But I don't know who that is yet. I hope it's going to be us.
And can I ask you to build on it? When you say who that's going to be, are you referring to a product, a AI, a robot, or are you referring to a person? Because one of the areas that has been challenging is, as all of this technology is developing, it can be useful, but there may still be a human element that's necessary. So one of the sad emails that I received was, we're really having a difficult time keeping up with providing care in our long-term care facilities. So therefore, can you approve continuous glucose monitors, right? And so that is a partial solution, but not the complete solution for the people who are residing. So anyway, just curious about, is it a person? Is it a thing? Is it how do we build a hybrid world? Because I think this will evolve over time.
We're very close to time, so can we please keep a quick answer?
It's a quantum computing. No, just kidding. So, no, it's a system of systems, right? It's going to all have to come together. There are challenges, but yeah, I think to be determined that human-computer interface and the human touch and the high touch will always be here with us.
Thanks so much to the panel. This was a terrific session. We really appreciate your willingness to be here, and thanks to all of you for sticking with us till the end. This was fantastic.
Again, thank you very much. Wonderful panel. A couple of housekeeping announcements. Any unclaimed posters are now at the registration desk. If you don't pick them up in another half hour, they will probably be gone. We did email you a post-event survey. We hope you can click on it and fill that out as soon as you can. We do take these responses very seriously. Some of you might have noticed that some changes were made this year, and they were the result of getting feedback from last year. I want to thank my team at the coordinating center who told me to say all these things. It's been a wonderful team. I don't know if any of them is here to hear that, but I really appreciate having them. You can't pull this off by yourself. It's definitely a team effort. And also want to acknowledge again our supporting partners who helped make this happen. I want to thank all of you for coming and sharing your expertise, and for those that are past pilot awardees, paying it forward and continuing to help those that are coming along. We're all in this together, and we will all benefit if we can work together. So I know we've had plenty of great conversations. It takes two people to have a conversation, so thank you all for participating in that, and I hope we've laid the seed for many new collaborations to come. Thank you so much, and safe travels.